What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and I am back with another edition of the betting show. As I come here to you, a bit fluey. I feel like I'm on like the I don't know, 7 of 10 of this terrible man flu. So hopefully I get through this and survive it all right. But we will have some bets for you today. 5 bets from both Cage Warriors and the UFC. I have some tasty prices from Cage Warriors. So I'm actually giving you 3 bets from Cage Warriors, and the last 2 bets today will be from the UFC. But I will run through some of the other UFC fights and some of the other prices that I think might be nice and that you might favour. Before we do that, though, let's talk about last week. Again, a bit of a 50-50 week. We hit with Sean O'Malley at minus 258. As I said last week, I thought that was a good price. And it turned out to be, I think in hindsight, if you're making that line again, Sean O'Malley minus 258, everyone would be calling it a steal. And as I said, I don't like giving big minus numbers. I don't want the show to be about that, but I really, so I picked O'Malley to win by decision. And then I actually bet O'Malley to win by knockout. That's how torn I was on it. But yeah, so you know, it's one of those ones. It can either go for you or go against you. And that one went against me in the betting, but in the tip I gave last week, him straight up. It's a great tip, I think. It's a great tip. Yeah, it was brilliant. But it's a great bet, I think. O'Malley straight up, considering the way the fight went. Then we Dustin Poirier, like one of the easiest bets of the year, I think, along with MVP. Although I went for MVP in the Flier, but I did mention I would have bet MVP straight up, which we will get to again in a second. But Poirier, at this time last week, he was plus 190, which was absolutely insane. I think we spoke about that at the time. Gilbert Burns again plus 140. I think the pick wasn't bad, as my guy Keith Chillian said on Twitter. He was 90 seconds or 70 seconds away from winning. You know, you could make that argument, although if he'd survived that big knee at the end, it could have been a 10-8, it could have been a draw, and then we'd all be going home unhappy. But that plus 140 bet didn't hit. The Blades Almeida over 1.5 rounds, that didn't hit as well. It finished a minute or two before that, unfortunately. And then MVP at plus 510 to win by knockout as the Flier of the week. That could have been a 6 or 7 time winner on Saturday night, but unfortunately for us who bet on it, it didn't hit. And we go again this week with but what price was MVP straight up? I think he was he plus 130 or something like that? And I think we did speak about that as well. So I think if you're following that line, you didn't go overboard like me, you'll be all right. So last week, 204, and the Flier didn't hit. Overall, 14 of 30. We're around that 50-50 mark, which I'm happy enough with. And only 1 Flier so far this year out of 8. Not great at all. Not great at all. The other update I must give you, though, is our bets for the year. 2 of them were on the line this weekend, and both of them hit. So the 5 bets, I have 5 bets for the year. The only one that hasn't happened yet is Michael Chandler. I gave him a plus 100 to beat Conor McGregor. Obviously, that fight, as mentioned, hasn't happened. But there were 4 plus bets. One fight didn't happen, so I gave you Amir Albazi. Who was he fighting? Brandon Moreno, I think. Plus 190. That fight didn't happen, so that's off. But then the other 3, Ilia Topuria, gave you that at plus 130. I gave you MVP at plus 125, which obviously he won it weekend, and Dustin Poirier at plus 124. Now that bet, if you bet it at the time I gave it, you probably got worse and worse because the price got better and better. But still, a winning bet is a winning bet, and I'm pretty happy with that so far. Now that's not counting to the record at the moment. At the end of the year, we will stick it in, and we will look at some of the other bets as well. The end of the year champions and all that. So I'm happy enough. So far you can't. What are we? What's the date we have? 3 months into the year, and 3 of the 5 bets. Well, 3 of the 4 bets really have hit, and we still have 1 going. So excellent. I will take that any year, and we go again. Right, this year. Let's or this week even. Let's talk about it, and let's go for our bets for the week. I'm very interested in some of these Cage Warriors fights, and the first bet I'm going for is Roberto Hernandez. He's fighting in, I don't know, is it it is the co-main event now, I believe, of Cage Warriors 168, and I got him at plus 115. Now, the all the odds aren't out yet. I'm recording this on Wednesday, but I'm looking at the odds on Fight Odds, which are usually very, very good. And I'm sure they'll be out on all the American sites and everything over the next while. And just let me the book. Yeah, so it's on it's on Bet Online, so it's one of the bigger books as well there. So it moved. It was plus 115, plus 105 over the last couple of days. That's around the price. I have it here plus 115. I like this bet an awful lot because it's probably the time where the opinion has switched on my guy Liam Gittins. So last year we spoke about Liam Gittins and how good he is. I gave him my Sheehan Show Cage Warriors Fighter of the Year, which, you know, I every time I do the awards every year, I obviously do them over in Severe MMA. Now I'm going to do them here on the Sheehan Show every year, as long as I'm around. And I like to take them seriously and put good thought into them and say why they are the best. And I think a lot of the reason why Liam Gittins won, my Fighter of the Year last year, was because probably he was the most underrated guy last year, most underappreciated guy last year for what he did. But I don't think that's any longer the case. When I watched obviously I've seen a lot of Gittins, but watched a good bit of Hernandez and talked to Brad about it as well and broke down this fight, and we kind of both agreed that this would be a close enough fight. But thinking about it a little bit more, I just think Hernandez might have a little bit too much for Gittins. And in fact, and we'll get to some other bets in a minute, but I think it might be a bad night for maybe the European side of Cage Warriors. I think some of the Americans that are coming in as underdogs here largely and have great chances to win some of these fights. And I think this is the standout to me, and that's why I gave it as my first bet. So just to give you the good points of Gittins, first of all, very strong on top. He always has punches in your face. He fights at a very... I mentioned this with Brad as well. If you haven't heard my preview for these two cards, please check it out in Sherdog on YouTube. But Gittins fights a very even pace. And he's a real 3-5 round fighter or 5-round fighter. He can like, you know, he's almost like a cyclist, you know. If I'm cycling 75 kilometers, I'll cycle at this pace. If I'm fighting 150 kilometers, I'll cycle at a different sort of pace. He fights that way, and he does it very well. Like, and it's a bit unusual in MMA because I don't often see that depth in MMA. And like, I've seen it watching a lot of the One Championship recently. I see a lot of it in Muay Thai, but rarely in MMA. And I think he's very, very good at that. And that means he doesn't get tired. And that means he's the ability to kind of wrestle between shots and also the ability to transition very, very well in between those shots. Hernandez on the other side of it then, if you're to look at like what would beat that Gittins style or what's good for that Gittins style, the first thing you need is good cardio, right? Because, as I said, very unusual to be able to fight at the pace that Gittins fights at. So, you need to fight at a high pace all the time to conclude a victory over that. And I think Hernandez does have that. He's very, very good cardio, good boxing, very good combinations. I think the biggest issue for him in this is when the fight does hit the mat and there is transitions going on, he doesn't do the best in transitions. And that's, if he's going to lose the fight, that's where he's going to lose it. But I watched his fight against Jonathan De Jesus, which we'll talk about more. Talk about him more in a minute. And the way the way he used his fight IQ in that fight, I suppose would be the best way of putting it. The way he planned that fight was really, really, really good. Where his footwork, his ring generalship, and all that was really, really, really fantastic. It's a very good guy like De Jesus, who's well able to do that himself. As I said, we'll talk about him in a minute. And I just feel like Gittins maybe hasn't met someone who has the ability to do that before. And if you can't get that guy to the ground and stay strong on top against him, is it going to be a little bit of you're chasing him? Then you give up that even pace that you fight. That's going to be an issue, I think, for Gittins if that is the case. And I do think it will be the case. And you're 2 rounds into that, and then he starts landing those combinations. He starts landing his big boxing, maneuvers, and it turns into a very different fight very, very quickly. That's really the big reason when I'm picking Hernandez. I think his cardio is good enough to fight with and get through what Gittins will bring. I think his IQ is smart enough to avoid it a lot of the time, and I think his hands are good enough to make him pay. So I'm going for Hernandez in this one. Part of me hopes I'm wrong because I have an awful soft spot for Gittins, and I did call him the fighter of the year last year. So, but I can't go against the tape. I did a few weeks ago. I remember I saying that I was like, I went against my own thought. On the what was it, the Hin and Fahey fight, and I got a bit of abuse in the comment section. I deserved it, but I won't do it. But there's 2 fights. Actually, I think the 3 cage orders fights. I'm refusing to do it this week. So first of all, Hernandez to get the win there. Second one I'm going for is De Jesus. Now he's plus 150, and that's actually he's plus 160. Looking at it again here, it's changed in the last hour or two, and he is fighting, as we all know, Luke Riley, who's a really good prospect coming out of next gen, the same place as Molly McCann and Paddy Pimblett. I would argue that this is one of the most high level fights you're going to see outside of the UFC in terms of, well, maybe high level is the wrong word. Let's put it this way. I think it's one of the most fun possible matchups you'll see outside of the UFC. It's a really, really, really interesting fight to me. A fight between 2 guys who, should probably be at the higher level, or one of them who's obviously touched it and been there for a while, and one guy who's on his way to being at that level in Luke Riley, who is 8-0. De Jesus 17-11. He has the experience and all of that. But just quickly on Riley, first of all, right? His last fight with Alexander Loof, I actually think maybe a lot of us made a mistake. I think that was fight of the year last year. We'd Volkanovski, and Makhachev was obviously, the clear and obvious choice. But in terms of fun fights, that was so good. And, he went 8-0, and he's beaten some very good guys in between that. Even Jack Eglin early in his career. De Jesus has been in there with some very good guys. He's only 33 years of age. He's won 3 of his last 4. The only one he lost was, I mentioned to Roberto Hernandez, was fighting for the title now. And, he was in Bellator before that, and the only guys he lost to there were Kai Kamaka and Pico, who are probably 2 of the top guys at the weight class now, and even higher weight classes with Pico. And he's been in there with Bill Algeo and Pat Sabatini and others as well. Now, he hasn't won all of those fights, but he's been in there and he has that experience. And I think that experience might be a large part of his victory here if he does get one. There's 2 reasons why I'm picking him here. I think his control is the biggest part of it. Like, right, if you haven't seen Riley, right, and you might, it's an easy comparison to make, I suppose, to Paddy Pimblett, but he's a better striker than Paddy Pimblett, but more of a madman. Paddy kind of realizes, I think, that he's not the best striker in the world and will take the fight to the ground, which is smart. Luke Riley, a better striker, but keeps striking. He has a takedown. He can fight on the ground as well. There's absolutely no doubt about it. But he has very good power, and he's just a madman on the feet. I think De Jesus, as I kind of alluded to in the Hernandez fight, where it was a kind of a long fight on the outside with a lot of control, and some of his other fights have been like that as well. He has the ability to do that against guys, say, like Riley. Maybe not as good as Riley in terms of some of the other fights he's had, but his kick from the outside is just so good. His control, slicing elbows when he comes inside. The biggest issue for him is when he does come inside, he stays inside too long. That's dangerous against Riley, but not dangerous in a way where he might get taken down. I think it's more dangerous in a way where it will bring it into a war. But when you're fighting Riley, and if you've watched any tape of him at all, surely that's the first thing in your game that you'll clean up. And if it is, he's a hard man to beat. Like in my notes here, as I said it to Brad as well, he's a very, 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 very hard man to beat when he sticks to that long game plan. And that long game plan is exactly, I think, what will beat Luke Riley. Now, maybe it won't. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think it's a real, real, real tough matchup for Riley. And I think it's a real good price. And now I had it 150 plus 160. I think it's a smashing price. Honestly, I think the Hernandez price of plus 115 would probably be a little bit make more sense, or a straight up, minus 110 type of fight, which we've seen a lot of recently. I think that would be a more sensible price for this. And if you were to give me the pick straight up as well, I think I would go for the Jesus. I really do. And I think a lot of the Cage Warriors watching stuff might disagree with me, and I absolutely might be wrong, because Luke Riley has come through everything. He really has, and he's been fantastic so far. But I think this is a tough matchup, and I'll be honest, I'm really looking forward to I'm really looking forward to seeing it. We'll talk more about the Cage Warriors of fights in a second, but the third bet actually, he's also from Cage Warriors. And it is the light heavyweight title fight. And I'm going for the favourite here. So I've gone for the two underdogs so far. I'm going for the favourite in Matty Byfield. And he is, let me just check. He's minus two. He's actually minus 200. He was minus 220 earlier, and minus 200 now in that fight. These are two big boys. And I think when you watch both of these lads individually, you think, okay, both are very good athletes, both hit very hard, both move very well for light heavyweights. But what is going to be the game changer? What's going to be the winner of this fight? Now, there's two things, right? And it'll either be the jiu-jitsu and ground game of Clamp, or it will be that extra additional striking ability that Byfield has, in my opinion. It'll be one of the two of them. And I've gone for Byfield, and I'll tell you why. I think Clamp might struggle to get him down. Now, he is a sneakily good wrestler, but when you have a guy like Byfield, and we've seen a lot of this recently as well, who will a little bit like Almeida against Blades the last day, right? No, it's almost the opposite. Well, they were both wrestlers, I suppose. But if you try to wrestle him, he can make you pay really badly. And what I mean by that is he could do exactly what Blades did. Stuff a takedown, bludgeon you with hammer fists or elbows or whatever it might be. He could see you coming in. He could hit you with a big knee. He could turn you over, get on top into the mount, and just rain down big shots on you. He's that sort of fighter. But the way he fights, he's a big, tall guy. I might get his height here, but he's absolutely massive. And the ability for him, a little bit like Hinan Fahea, to land those big shots, to land those big, long kicks, is something which most guys don't have, but he does have. He absolutely has that. He's won, he's finished off all 6 of his wins, 4 by knockout. And I think the difference here is that Clamp has that ability too, but the distance where Clamp is going to do it from in terms of the striking is just going to favour Byfield. It's like everything you've trained for your whole life to be good at. There's another lad who's coming along, he's just a little bit better at it. They're 6'6" Byfield is 6'4" Clamp, so there is that difference. And I never looked up those heights before, but you'd know by looking at them. You find out a Team Renegade as well. Fabian Edwards, Christian Leroy Duncan. He's a lot of good lads around the same size, around the same weight, who can move around. Great training. And I just think he's going to land one of those big shots, and it's going to be very tough on Andy Clamp. Like, he's only lost once in his career, and that was back in 2021. Hasn't lost since he went into Cage Warriors. And Clamp had a big opportunity against Chuck Campbell, and he got knocked out in the first round of that fight as well. I fancied him coming into that one, and it was I fancy a similar thing to happen here. So I actually think that price is very good at minus 200, and we'll see where it goes after that. Right. That's it from the two Cage Warriors cards, but we'll tell you more about the Cage Warriors betting in a minute. Bet number 4. I've gone for the under 1.5 rounds in OSP versus Kennedy and Nzechukwu. And that's at minus 140. So a pretty good price there. Not too bad at all. I think for that fight, considering I suppose who is fighting. You look at OSP and a guy who has he's been to plenty of decisions in his career, 15 decisions down through the years, but not as many lately. He got knocked out in the first round by Philip Lins. Okay, he went to decision with Shogun before that, but before that, it was just around, in his 3 fights before that, he won one, lost 2, and all around the halfway point of round 2, around the 1.5. He a lot of second round finish. They're submitted in the second round by he beat Nzechukwu, submitted by Krylov. First round win over Tyson Pedro, first round loss to Ilir Latifi. So there's lots of them in there. Kennedy Nzechukwu in. He's only been to decision 4 times in his career. His last 3 all finished before the 1.5, and I just think it's a recipe for that to happen. It's a big fight for both of them, right? So OSP, he's lost 3 of his last 4, only beaten Shogun. He's now 40 years of age. And Kennedy Nzechukwu, the other side of it, then he was on this great run, beating Robertson, Kutalaba, and Clark, and then he lost to Dustin Jacoby. And I think a lot of people are kind of questioning where he's at right now, because after those 3 wins, we were saying, oh, he's gone to the next level after he lost to Negamirianu and Zhang before that. And now, I suppose, as fickle as MMA fans and MMA analysts, I suppose, are, is like, where is he going next? What's he doing next? And I think, as I joked at it, I think a guy like Nzechukwu will want to come out and prove something to those folks. And what I think that will look like is him going all out. Now, him going all out will either end up in him getting the knockout, which I think it will, or probably getting knocked out himself. And that's why I've gone for the under 1.5. I think at that price, I was looking through I actually went through a lot of bets this week to look for a good one. This card is not great, but that was my favorite one. I just think one of them is getting more than likely knocked out here, and I think it will be relatively early. So minus 140 for the under 1.5. I'll snap your hand off for that one. We've a lot of other bets to get through, so let's get to the Flier. Again, the Flier was a tough one to pick this week, and I have gone a little bit. Do you know what? On these 2 bets, I've gone a little bit based off of the meaning of the fight, and this is a wild one now, a real wild one. But I've gone for plus 700 for the main event between Tuivasa and Marcin Tybura to go to a decision. Now, I'm going to have to do a lot of spins on this one. Only twice Tuivasa has gone to decision in his career. Tybura has gone a lot more. He's gone 12 times to a decision in his career. So that there is a lot there, first of all. You look at his last few fights, 3 of his last 4 have gone to decision. The only one is Aspinall, who's obviously on a very different level. If you look at, say, Ivanov, Romanov, Volkov, you could say all of those lads are on maybe a pretty similar level to Tuivasa, right? And he went to decision with all those 1-2 and lost 1. Tuivasa, on the other hand, then, he has obviously lost to Volkov, Pavlovich, and Gane over his last 3. And he is a guy who has lost fights before being cut from the UFC and ended up coming back. I think he's at the stage where another loss could be another cut, basically. And I think he's going to want to be a little bit safer. He's going to want to be a little bit smarter. And I think that leads to a longer fight. Also, this is 5 rounds, right? Which could work against the whole going to the decision thing, obviously, because it's less likely because it's 5 rounds. But also, I think both of them, and especially Tuivasa, because Tybura kind of does it naturally anyway, I think will fight to a slower sort of pace. So, a slower pace from Tuivasa, a more careful game plan from Tuivasa, along with Tybura, who for a heavyweight goes to decision a lot. I think there is a case for this to go longer. I was looking at the overs. The overs are very good prices as well. I was looking at one of them as a straight up bet, but I needed a Flyer, and I think this is what. Look, this probably won't happen. Let's be honest. Someone will probably catch a punch after 7 seconds and they get knocked out. But once every so often, we have a heavyweight slap fest. We have two lads under pressure who can pull the trigger, and we have a long, drawn-out fight. And if you put a fiver on this, and you win, you get back your 40 quid afterwards, but you have to stay up and fight through a boring fight. Well, it won't be worth it. It won't be worth it. At least you get some compensation for it. So, yeah, that's the flyer of the week, and I'm sticking to it. Right. Let's look at some of the other bets from the UFC. Macy Chison Penny Kanzad, big favorite for Chison. I think that's just about right as well. She's minus 250. A very interesting fight between Barberena and Mershard. A flyer I was looking at in that, and I know Barberena doesn't really get knocked out that much, but Mershard at plus 800. I kind of like that as a flyer. Let me just check Barberena here again. So in terms of him getting knocked out, he's only got knocked out twice in his career. None of them have been. When was the last one? It was against Randy Brown back in 2019. But he's up at this is at middleweight, isn't it? I assume it is. Up at middleweight now. Mershard is not exactly a big knockout artist either. Like, he's more of a submission guy. And he's a very good price, or a very small price enough to win by submission, I believe. Let me just check that again. To win by submission, he is plus 110. Yeah, so obviously the 27 submissions, only 6 knockouts, but still. A flyer. I won't go overboard with it now, but not a bad one to maybe have a look at if you're looking for a big one. What else? Nathan Levy's an underdog against Mike Davis, might be interesting. He's there plus 310 in one place. This Philo Osborne fight as well. I was going back and forth. I was going to pick Ode Osborne. Jafel Philo came in and he's not looked bad. Obviously, he fought Makayev, didn't he? And he has impressed, but Ode Osborne's maybe a guy who has scope to improve in his game as well, and may turn it around there. But in the end, I did avoid that. I do like Josh Kulaba over Danny Silva, best price minus 180. I do like that price as well there on him. And then the other fights, Angelus against Brian Battle. I do like Brian Battle minus 175 there. I think that's a good price. The Kennedy and Nzechukwu fight is mad, minus 549 for Nzechukwu. Best price plus 500 for Preux. I think that's a little bit much. That was another one I was looking at for my flyer, but I do think Kennedy will win. Just maybe not that much. The over and under, as I talked about a minute ago, under 2.5 rounds, minus 381. Sorry, no, it was the main event I was talking about, the unders. We'll look at that in a second. But yeah, anyway, what about the unders in that one? Obviously, the bet we have gone in that is the under 1.5 at minus 140. So, yeah. And then the main event, the over and unders there, over 2.5 rounds, plus 180. I do like that as well. Over 1.5 rounds, minus 124. Yeah, I have an awful feeling it's going to be a bit of a safer fight. Maybe I have that. Maybe that I have that feeling too much. The flyer I was looking at, if it was a little bit higher, would have given it over 3.5 rounds at plus 310. But I avoided that as well. So yeah, there's that. KSW, just quickly, the main event there is it's not the best KSW card in the world. I'd go for a double of Vishlak and Rutowski there, I think, in the main event and co-main event. I do like Vishlak in that fight. Piotr Kuberski and Mikhail Materla. Actually, I think that's the main event, in fact. That's a really good fight. I like it a lot. Kuberski is minus 350. I think that's too much. I like Materla there at plus 260. I think I'll be betting on Materla at that price there. Right, let's look at Cage Warriors. Paterno and Stockman. Again, if you're looking for the American guys coming in and you want to maybe do a treble on that or something like that, Stockman at plus 230. It's a pretty good price, but I do think Paterno, his last fight in Octagon, he was fantastic there. Emil Brown and Aronov. Emil Brown is the favorite, minus 275. Aronov plus 215. After what happened last time out against Bashar, be hard it'd be hard to bet on O'Neal Brown at that price. I think considering what Aronov is, he's 5-1. Like, he's a weird record because he's like 5-4 or something like that. Although it's different in different places. His record, he like lost 3 fights. Do they count and all? But he's won like his last 5 in a row or something like that. He's a bouncy boxer. He just throws big shots all the time, and it's a dangerous one. So I don't know. Would I be betting on O'Neal Brown at that price, to be honest? Teddy Stringer's a massive price as well. Sorry, a massive favourite. Minus 900. In that one, Connor Wilson minus 165. I do like him over the Sicario, and that's 167, 168. Then we have the fights I mentioned before, Clamp and Byfield, minus 200 for Clamp, actually out to minus 220 on one place as well, plus 180-ish for Andy Clamp. You'll get him there, minus 200 for Riley De Jesus, plus 160. I love James Power. I think he's one of the best prospects. He lost his last fight out. This is probably a way better price than you'd normally get for him against Gianluca Rocca, minus 260. So if you have an accumulator or something, throw him into it. I would say the same about Adam Cullen, still building his way back up after his loss. The main event then, we spoke about Roberto Hernandez. Liam Gittins is minus 135, Hernandez plus 115. And that's kind of the top and bottom of those cards there. So a lot of fun MMA this weekend, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. Let me recap my 5 bets for the week before I go. I'm going for Hernandez over Cage Warriors, plus 115, plus 160 for De Jesus, and minus 200 for Byfield, all in Cage Warriors. And then in the UFC, OSP Kennedy under 1.5 rounds, and minus 140 Tuivasa Tybura to go to decision in the Florida week. And a mad one that probably won't happen at plus 700. All right, everyone, that's it for me. Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Sean Sheehan for Sherdog.com, and I'll see you all next time.